So Jon Jones had a rough press conference, okay? I happened to be at it, and I thought it kind of looked like a normal press conference. But where I was at, I couldn't hear everything, and I could hear what John was saying, or I could hear what Reyes was saying, or I could hear what the people on the stage. But where I was at, I had a hard time with what the media or the fans were asking the opposite direction. So I didn't always know it was being responded to. So like there was fans that were heckling him and making cocaine jokes and yelling him out, and it was just rough, right? It was a little bit touch and go. So I felt as though John got through it. The parts that I could see, which were John's words, I even thought he had a very funny line in there. He was talking about Colby, and he's like, "Look, a lot of people don't think I'm a good person, but man, this guy's not a good person." Like he was saying his piece, and if you're deemed not a good person and you're deemed that by Jon Jones, it's a pretty big insult. But John was playful with how he said it, and John basically said what I just said. It just worked. I thought it was funny. I thought that he was flowing well, and I can also remember early in John's career where his own inner circle, and I'm talking about his teammates, those were his worst enemies. His teammates would never say anything. All the other athletes would say stuff, but we would all get our information from his own team. His own team couldn't stand the guy. And it was a simple situation where he would show up late, he would leave early, he was there 3 days a week, and then he could win any match there was out there. It was just jealousy. But this is where a lot of it came, and they go, man, this guy's a phony, and he's walking around holding the Bible. He's got a 6-pack of beer in the back seat. He got the Bible up front to show anybody that'll ask him. John got a hard time for being a phony. Now, I don't know that John doesn't have the right. He can put out whatever image he wants. He can work the good guy angle, the religious guy angle, the rough guy angle, the somewhere in between, the funny guy. I mean, there's all sorts of characters. If he wants to go and play one, I don't know that I would be the one to come down on him for that. I'm just telling you it was a very real thing that it was going on. John and fake. Oh, he's fake. His interviews are fake. His personality is fake. John and fake somehow were kind of married together. And there is something about it from the mental side that if somebody pretends to be a bigger jerk than they actually are, they will be given credit for that performance. They will be given a pat on the back for that manipulation. They will be revered. If they if they portray themselves as worse than they actually are, they will be revered. There's also something to be said if you try to come out with a character and be a better, a nicer, a more thoughtful person than you actually are, where they're going to beat you over the head with it. Okay. But this was the game, and this was what John had to play. And once he got in trouble 2 or 3 times, he finally threw his hands up and goes, man, the gig is up. I'm done playing that angle. Here's who I am. I could kick anybody's ass. Oh, and by the way, I could probably drink you under the table too. So which one do you want to play first? I mean, it was just a little bit more of a real John. And I thought he got in his element. Personally, I thought he got in his element. I thought he started to do pretty good. I liked a little bit more of that rougher John. And I don't subscribe to the press conference antics and everything that he got in with Daniel, but I am saying a Jon Jones that wants to step forward and say, I'm the man, what do you want to do about it? There was something that was a little bit more interesting and compelling and believable for me than the John that wanted to get up there and not look you in the eye and talk about, being in bed early and being up early and setting goals and working hard. All this stuff that we find out from his own teammates, he doesn't subscribe to. Okay, great. If you're the Dennis Rodman of the sport, but you can still win the championships with Jordan on Saturday night, I'm okay with it. So one of the things that happened in light of this press conference is John came out and he told the media he was pursuing the Stipe Miocic fight, but the UFC was more interested in making the Stipe Cormier trilogy. That's a mistake, okay? Here's the message John is trying to give. Champ's a real thing. I could be one. I even tried to do it. Somebody else stopped me, but I tried. Pat on my back for my courage and my effort, and just so everybody in the world is clear, I was willing to fight Stipe. That's what he's hoping you hear, and that's the whole reason he revealed that. That isn't what's heard. What's heard is you don't have power within your industry. You're the champion of the world, who many people say is the greatest of all time, and you couldn't pick a fight with the heavyweight champion? When we know the organization loves to do champ because that's how Daniel got to Stipe in the very first place. He had the 205-pound title where you were on leave. And then you reveal something that was behind the scenes in a way to make yourself look courageous, but now you just revealed yourself as somebody they don't respect. It's as simple as that. If you call a shot particularly a champ versus champ, a fight that we know is big. For any other athletes, a fight that has been made multiple times in the last 24 months in every major organization in the world. You call that shot and you don't get it, you take that to the grave. Because you do not look like a courageous person that wanted to fight Stipe. You looked as though somebody who had an idea brought it to the table and didn't get his way. Which means you either weren't respected, you weren't a big enough draw, you were too hard to work with, you weren't compelling, you couldn't be trusted. There's a number of things. If they're taking a 41-year-old former champion and giving him the spot that the young reigning champion would like to have. We've talked about this many times, but the greats will always sell you something, but they're playing a different game. You never know what it is they're selling. The greats will never come out and show you what they're selling. Conor McGregor sold within this industry one thing, and it wasn't tickets, and it wasn't t-shirt, and it's not even whiskey. Conor McGregor sold power. It was the one thing Conor didn't have. He did have a commodity. He did have a good look. He does have entertainment. He did have incredible skills. That wasn't a work. That wasn't the sell. That was the presentation. That was the commodity, and that was the final product that he was able to monetize. The sell was power. That's the one thing he wishes he had, that he wanted, and that he woke up one day and realized, I don't have. That's okay. No other fighters do either, but he sold that he did. He sold that he would sit down in the offices with the bosses and make the determination. He would decide who was going to have the red panty night. He would decide what was going to be next, and he would decide that with groupthink with the leaders. It was an act. It's not real. He never sat down in one of those rooms and made any of those decisions, but he sold that he did. And people began to believe that he did. And people began to treat him in a way as though he had power, as though he was signing guys or releasing guys or deciding who gets participation and what end of it. He was never looking out for anybody. He wasn't doing any of those things. He just had his own hand out. That's okay. He did nothing wrong, but he sold power. And you see how effective that sell job was. Jon just did the opposite, and I'm okay with him doing it if it was in the spirit of honesty. It wasn't in the spirit of honesty. It was in the spirit of, I am not afraid of Stipe. I even tried to fight Stipe. It was meant to be a self-serving statement that he never had to offer because nobody ever outed him and it never came up, but he was so glued to getting a little bit of rub and shining his own wheels that he dumped himself. And there's a reason that his last two fights, half the building's been dressed up like empty seats. I'm not sure that this next fight with Reyes is going to be any different. I hope that it is. I'm not sure that it's not going to be any different, but you don't have a thinker there with the belt. You got a self-serving guy that doesn't seem to understand which way the wind blows. And has now, for reasons unknown and inflicted wounds, self-inflicted that never need to come up, showed his hands that he is not respected and does not have any power within the business.